In every use of the official power, the president is now a king above the law. That's what Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in her dissent after the Supreme Court ruling that presidents are immune from criminal prosecution for official acts. In response, Democrats unlocked a new chess move against this decision. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer rolled out legislation to eliminate presidential immunity called the No Kings Act. This bill states that presidents and vice presidents, sitting or former, cannot have immunity unless specified by Congress. Now, in theory, this is the kind of reform that would be easier to accomplish than Biden's proposed constitutional amendment because Schumer's plan would only need a simple majority of both chambers of Congress to get it passed. But we know that Republicans will fight it. Schumer's move is a rare public example of what democracy in action actually looks like. It has 34 co-sponsors so far, with Oregon Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley joining just last week. With us now, Vox senior correspondent Ian Millhiser. Ian, thanks so much for being here. Can you just walk us through more clearly the details of this bill and how significant it is that Majority Leader Schumer is just introducing this after Biden's proposed reforms?
It's very significant. So I think the broader context here, the Trump immunity decision was such a betrayal by the Supreme Court. I mean, the idea that the president can order the Justice Department to arrest all of his political rivals and, maybe throw them in a camp somewhere and nothing can be done to that president afterwards is, it's unimaginable. I'm still shocked that the Supreme Court did this. So there are various different proposals. People, mostly Democrats, are trying to figure out a way to do something about this terrible decision. What Schumer's bill relies on is a rarely used congressional power called jurisdiction stripping. And jurisdiction stripping means the Constitution says that the Supreme Court gets to hear appeals with such exceptions that the Congress may make. So Schumer wants to create an exception to the court's ability to hear cases involving presidential immunity. Is it going to work? I'm skeptical because the Supreme Court can just strike down any law and they can make up a reason to strike down this law. But I think it shows the creativity and, the fact that Democrats realize that something truly awful has happened and we need to be seeking creative solutions for it.
So speaking of being creative, Ian, let's play this out a little bit. You talked about the fact that the Supreme Court might do something. You've written about the fact that, Republicans are likely to fight this. What other maneuvers might we expect to see in order to try and get this piece of legislation across the finish line?
Right. So, the first thing is that Democrats have to win the election. Right now, they don't control the House. And so nothing reducing the power of a Republican-controlled Supreme Court is going to pass so long as the Republican Party controls either the White House or either House of Congress. So everything turns on the election. Now, assuming that Democrats take both houses and Kamala Harris wins, then, Congress would pass Schumer's bill. President Harris would presumably sign it. And then there would, potentially be a lawsuit saying that, well, wait, this isn't constitutional. The Congress did jurisdiction stripping wrong. They exceeded its power to use jurisdiction stripping. And that would have to go up to the Supreme Court, and we'd see if the Supreme Court would strike it down. Again, we're talking about a court that said that Donald Trump was allowed to do crimes when he was in office. So I don't have a lot of confidence in the humility of this court or its willingness to, accept that the democratic process is turned against them if such a bill passes. But then there are other options. Congress controls the court's budget. Congress can potentially add seats to the Supreme Court, and then those could be filled with Harris appointees. So the idea is, you want to be creative. Jurisdiction stripping is a less aggressive move than, say, adding seats to the Supreme Court. So give the justices a chance to be reasonable here. And if they aren't, then there are other things that Congress can do.
You just were talking about the court essentially giving the president permission to do crimes. In her dissent, which we were referencing, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned if a president were to order the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, organize a military coup, take a bribe, they would be immune. What do you think that this says about the state of democracy, knowing that there are so many lawmakers, particularly Republicans, who are okay with this decision? Or do you think that it's more so ideologically they could care less. This is just to support their guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be a little charitable to the Republican justices here. I just think they're incompetent. I think that they live in a world of theory, and in their theoretical world, there's this thing called the unitary executive that they care a lot about. And they just didn't think through the consequences of what it would mean to say that if Donald Trump gets back into office, he's allowed to order the Justice Department to arrest all of his enemies. I think they just live in this world of theory, and it's very unfortunate. I mean, it's possible that they did it because they wanted to pave the road to a dictatorship. But the same day that they handed down the Trump immunity decision, they also handed down a decision saying that the Republican legislatures in Florida and Texas aren't allowed to seize control of what media companies have to publish. So if they were going for a dictatorship, I would have expected that First Amendment case to come down the other way. I just think they're just very bad at their jobs, and they did not understand what they were doing when they handed down that awful, awful Trump immunity decision.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes: never attribute to malice what can be claimed by incompetence. Ian Millhiser, thank you so much for being with us. Ending up shortly.